Ladies and gentlemen, a formal welcome. One second.
It's a new disclaimer thing.
Yes, it's a new feature now.
This meeting is being recorded.
Like it's telling us it's recorded, and if we want to continue or to leave the session.
So what are we doing?
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Well,
so you have to, hopefully, Ray, you have to click on continue.
I hope that you continue. So this is a new Zoom feature. Interesting.
Yes, as of today.
Wow. All right, I guess it makes sense. All right.
Yes, so people
fine, good. Well, we want the Torah to be preserved, so hopefully we'll get everybody in with us on this. All right, so I'm going to open up my screen. Well, I guess one thing's for sure. Zoom is not schluffing. They are not taking a break. They're active, creating new features. Okay, well, this is Daily Power Parsha. Today is Monday, May 24th, and we have a brand new Torah portion, which I am about to show you in the shared screen. Torah portion is Beha'alotecha, and you can just study along with me as we go through it. So this is going to be Numbers chapter 8, verse number 1. Let's jump right in. All right, first mitzvah is about the menorah. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, speak to Aaron, of course, Aaron was the high priest, and say to him, when you light the lamps, the 7 lamps shall cast their light toward the face of the menorah. Now, if you recall, already in the book of Exodus, like 2 books ago, we read about the instruction to build the menorah. We've read about the instruction to prepare the olive oil for the menorah. But how do you light it? The specifics, how do you light it and all that stuff. So here the Torah gives us a little bit of a quick insight into this. When you light the 7 lamps of the menorah, they should all face toward, well, it says they shall cast light toward the face of the menorah, which is the subject of some dispute. But the simple understanding is they should all point toward the center branch. Now, this is something we've talked about. I know you and I have talked about this many times, but just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page here, the Hanukkah or the Chanukiah, the Hanukkah menorah that we use today has 9 branches, 4 on each side and a center. So 4, 4, and 1, which is 9. The temple menorah was 3, 3, and 1. 3, 3, and 1 for a total of 7 branches. And the middle one was not a shamish, which is a helper candle, and therefore it's higher, set off from the other 8 candles, because the 8 is the mitzvah and the 1 is the helper. No, the temple menorah, all 7 were part of the mitzvah. So 3, 1, and 3, and all were the same, the same level, the same height, and they were all mitzvah lamps. The Torah says when you light the lamps, they should face toward the center, which is kind of what we did in our jewelry workshop, right, Donna?
Yes.
When we did the bracelets, right?
Right, because it had the center gold.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we had a flame flourish. No,
we had, so the bracelet had the inserts of the gold rings, which represented on each side 4 flames, and then in the center was a round gold disc, which represented the helper candle.
Yes. Okay, good. Now, if you take a look at Rashi, which I just brought up on the screen, so Rashi explains what does it mean toward the face of the menorah. Rashi quotes the Talmud, and he says toward the middle lamp, and that's what I told you a moment ago, which is not on one of the branches, but the menorah itself, right? The middle lamp is not one of the branches that extends, but it's the center stem, right? It's the center, I don't know what you would call it. It's the trunk. Does a menorah have a trunk? Trees have trunks. I don't know, but it's the middle of the menorah. That's the center middle lamp. And the other 6 are protruding 3 on each side. It's appropriate. Oh, wait, did I just stop sharing? Whoops. It's appropriate to mention, I believe, that the Rebbe was the Rebbe advocated for an acknowledgement of Rashi and Rambam, Rashi and Maimonides' understanding of the menorah, which is not a curved candelabra, but one that has diagonals. So if I were to, I don't know how I'm going to do this. No, I was going to see if I could pull up a whiteboard to draw it for you. But I think you've all seen the pictures, right? The Arch of Titus has that rounded menorah. And according to the Rambam, Maimonides, according to Rashi, our go-to commentary, that was not the temple menorah. It might have been another candelabra in the temple compound, but it wasn't what it looked like. It was a menorah with diagonal branches, and that's why the Chabad menorahs, even on Hanukkah, try to kind of publicize that element of the temple menorah. Okay, let's continue. This verse number 4. This was the form of the menorah. It was hammered work of gold, which, as you and I know from previous discussions, means that it was hammered out of one solid block of gold. That's what it means. Miksha was hammered out of one piece, not welded together. From its base to its flower, it was hammered work according to the form that the Lord had shown Moses. So did he construct the menorah. Moses had difficulty in understanding what it was supposed to look like, as honestly, you and I can probably relate to when we read those Torah portions that talk about how to build the tabernacle with all the items. And we're like, what's an amma again? What does this look like in three-dimensional real life? Right? So Moshe had some questions about the menorah, so God showed it to him. All right, let's continue. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the Levites from among the children of Israel and cleanse them. So this is a ritual purification for the Levites, for the Levim. Remember, Moses also was a Levite. So this is his brothers, so to speak, his mishpacha, his family. I mean, we're all family, but his closer family or close family. So here we go. This is what you shall do to them so as to cleanse them. And by the way, we spoke about this also before in Leviticus. When he inaugurated the tabernacle, he did this to get the Levites up and running. So sprinkle them with cleansing water and pass a razor over all their flesh, shave their hair, and then they shall wash their garments and cleanse themselves. They shall take a young bull with its meal offering of fine flour mingled with oil, mingled with oil. And you shall take a second young bull as a sin offering. You shall bring the Levites in front of the tent of meeting, and you shall gather the entire congregation of the children of Israel. You shall bring the Levites before the Lord, and the children of Israel shall lay their hands upon the Levites. That's not an act of a scuffle, but in an act of respect. Then Aaron shall lift up the Levites. Aaron is a Kohen, shall lift up the Levites as a waving before the Lord on behalf of the children of Israel, that they may serve in the Lord's service. So this is how the Levites were inaugurated into the service with this protocol. The Levites shall lay their hands on the heads of the bulls and make one as a sin offering and one as a burnt offering to the Lord to atone for the Levites. That's how the Levites came into their appointment. You shall present the Levites before Aaron, the Kohen, the high priest, and his sons, the other Kohanim, and lift them as a waving before the Lord. Thus, hey Mark, good to see you. Thus shall you set apart the Levites. Look at you, sliding in with perfect timing. Thus shall you set apart the Levites. Mark is a Levi from the midst of the children of Israel, and the Levites shall become mine. All right, I guess Mark is spoken for, because Mark belongs to God, because God says they are mine, not anyone else's. So this is the process by which they were inaugurated and appointed into the service. There was some mikveh action, there was some shaving action, there was some waving action, there was some sacrificial action, there was some hand placing action, and that is the deal. While this pomp and circumstance, or pomp and ceremony, or whatever the right phrase is, the answer is because they had a very, very special job. And part of that is you have to feel they have a special job. And when there's a protocol behind it, a ritual behind it, that just creates part of that experience and the ambiance and just reinforces this is something legit. It's no different than all of the rituals that we have in our own lives. Rituals kind of lead to a sense of valuing something, a sense of importance. Okay, I'm going to toggle Rashi and see if there's any Rashis that I wanted to mention. Okay, here we go. Interesting. Why was it that they had to shave their hair? So Rashi explains that I found, actually, let's do both of these Rashis. They were sprinkled with cleansing water. This is not just the mikveh, this is from the ashes of the red cow, the red heifer, which is the highest form of purification is through the ashes of the red cow, the red heifer, mixed with pure water. Why was this part of the Levite appointment protocol? So as to cleanse them from contamination by those who are in contact with the dead. In other words, before they begin their service, let's just do a default cleansing to make sure everybody, all the Levites are good to go. And then you pass a razor over all their flesh. So Rashi says, I found in the writings of Rabbi Moses Hadarshan, Rabbi Moshe the preacher. And he says like this, since the Levites were submitted in atonement for the firstborn who had practiced idolatry when they worshiped the golden calf. Remember, the Levites got the gig because the firstborn blew it. The firstborn were dancing around the golden calf. So God says, you guys, forget about it. I'm giving it to the Levites. So since that's the case, that their whole position came through some others worshiping idols, which is called sacrifices to the dead, and one afflicted with tzara'at is considered dead, they thus required shaving like those afflicted with tzara'at. In other words, they had emerged from death. What does that mean? They were appointed from those that had worshipped the golden calf, which is a dead idol. So they had emerged from that state of devastation. And like the person afflicted with tzara'at, when a person gets out of that state of devastation, part of the protocol is shaving all the hair, reset, new start, and that's what the Levites did as they were appointed to their service. I hope that makes sense. I think it's a very, very interesting angle that Rashi quotes from Rabbi Moshe Hadarshan, which, by the way, is out of character for Rashi. You and I know this. Rashi, his stated objective is to explain the simple meaning of the verse. If you want a drasha, if you want something more exotic, there's an app for that. There are commentaries for that. But if you want the straightforward explanation, that's Rashi. Rashi here deviates from that and quotes the Rabbi Moshe Hadarshan. He quotes someone who's giving more of a midrashic, more of a drush, more of a homiletical understanding, an allegorical understanding, and not a necessarily simple understanding. Rashi does that when it's difficult to explain the simple meaning otherwise. So he has to lean on something a little bit more exotic at times, even to explain it from a simple level. Okay, let's jump in. Let's see if there's any other Rashis, and if not, we're going to go straight to the second reading. Okay. Yeah, wavings as well is like tzara'at. So yeah, there's a strong connection. It's interesting. There's a strong kind of association that we're seeing between the Levites and someone who has recovered from tzara'at, that skin ailment that is considered as, akin to death almost on a certain level. And someone who gets out of that is like reborn into a new state, certainly spiritually, like from a place of gossip to a place of, healing. The Levites emerged from a place of doom and gloom, from the darkness of the golden calf. So we could kind of see that type of connection. All right, second reading. I think we're ready to roll. Numbers chapter 8, verse number 15. Let's continue with the Levites. Following this, which includes the sprinkling of the paraduma water, the red heifer water, the haircut, the waving, the sacrifices. So following this, the Levites shall come to serve in the tent of meeting. You shall cleanse them and lift them as a waving. For they, take a look at this. You're going to love this verse, 16. For they are wholly given over to me, completely given over to me, God says, from among the children of Israel, instead of those that open the womb. That's firstborn, right? Instead of the firstborn, instead of those that open the womb, all the firstborn of Israel, instead of those guys, I have taken them meaning the Levites, for myself. The Levites got the gig because the firstborn dropped the ball with the golden calf. But here's what I want to focus on. They're wholly given over to me. In the Hebrew, it doesn't say that. It says, Nisunim heimali. Nisunim means given. It's a double expression. If you see the words that I highlighted, it's literally, and I know we're right before the Hebrew course, we're hours before the Hebrew course. Nonetheless, right? It's the same word repeated twice. Nisunim, which means given. That's why the translation is wholly given. In other words, like definitely given. But Rashi says something else. Hebrew nisunim. This double expression denoting two types of given over. They're given over for the service of carrying and given over for the singing. Nisunim means they were dedicated. They were given over. They were appointed for two tasks. Nisunim. They were schlepping and they were singing. And by now you know that I mean schlepping with all, I keep on doing that, with all respect and love. 1 second. I keep on trying to toggle off Rashi and I'm ending up stopping the share. So excuse me for a moment as I pull this back up. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again correctly. Okay, so this is nisunim. They have two jobs. And as I explained last week, I even mentioned this on Shabbos because I really love this idea that it's up to us how we view the burdens that the weights that we carry. Is it a burden or is it beautiful? Is it a pain or is it a pleasure? Right? That's how we choose to decide. I think I mentioned this. Did I tell you guys that I'm working on another book? Have I mentioned this? Yes? No? A book about the Rebbe's guidance, personal guidance and advice. Sorry?
No, you did not.
Well, the cat's out of the bag. There you go. So
good.
Yeah,
we always get the scoop in that group.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. DPP. This is where all the breaking news is. Yeah, they used to say back even today, but you get your news in the mikveh, like men in the morning. If you go to mikveh every day, so that's where everyone discusses the morning, the morning news in the mikveh. They say a joke about Bill Clinton once wanted to see this is maybe before the election. He wanted to see like what the New York Jews are thinking about him. So he, disguises himself, goes to mikveh. Whatever. I'm not going to get into details here. Okay, whatever. Maybe switch out the doesn't matter which president you're thinking. Who cares? The punchline, you'll get the punchline in a second. He goes in and he says to some guy, so what have you heard about Clinton? What do you think about Clinton? He says, I don't know about him as president, but rumor has it that he's heading over to a mikveh today. Anyway, so mikveh is where all the news breaks. But DPP for us this is where the action happens. Yeah. So I'm working on a book. I'm actually not writing it. I'm editing and kind of shaping and guiding it, but playing a pretty significant role in the book and doing a lot of writing myself. But the premise is, core ideas that the Rebbe used in letters and correspondences with people and really mentoring and counseling people to kind of get to help in various ways, whether it's, emotional stuff or psychological stuff, whatever, across the board. Just ideas of counseling. And one of the major themes is this idea of perspective. And this is a chapter that I actually worked on last night. It's like, there's always going to be good and there's always going to be the not so good. And the question is simply this: what are you focused on, right? How do you see it? What are you focused on? Are you focused on the negative or the positive? It's like somebody wrote, there's a few letters like this, but somebody wrote to the Rebbe saying essentially, I've never had anything good in my life. The Rebbe says, I'm shocked that you said this, because you, in the same letter that you write that you've never had anything good happen, you write about your family and your kids and all that stuff. And the Rebbe says there's so many people that don't have a family, don't have kids, that want to, et cetera. And you take things for granted that people simply don't have. And, of course, that the Rebbe also didn't have children. And that was something certainly that weighed on the Rebbe's mind, at least I believe, as the Rebbe was writing that letter. And the point is, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the blessings that we have, or are we looking at what to complain about? So again, not a criticism. Obviously, what the Rebbe was not criticizing, the Rebbe was trying to refocus the attention on the blessing. So I would say in a similar way, nisunim. Yeah, we have to carry a burden. The question is, do we look at it, perspective, as something, negative and annoying, and it's a pain, it's difficult, or do we look at it as a privilege? It's like the same thing with Judaism in general. Is it a privilege or is it a pain? The old refrain that many Jews had, in the shtetl, and even in the early years of Jewish life in the U.S. was that it's schwer zu sein a Yid. It's difficult to be a Jew. It's hard to be a Jew, and I mean, unintended consequences. It created a mindset in the younger generation that Judaism is something to run away from, because who wants to be part of something that's so difficult or so painful or so traumatizing. So it's no surprise that people ran away from it. It's another way to look at it is, it's a pleasure to be a Jew, or it's a privilege to be a Jew. And the challenges, anything worth having is going to come with challenges. So that's the way. Anyway, it's really a question of focus. Let's continue. But anyway, nisunim, it's all about this double task of caring and singing. The question is, do we sing while we carry? We will if we realize that it's a privilege. Verse number 17. For all the firstborn among the children of Israel are mine, whether man or beast, since the day I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. I have sanctified them for myself. In other words, the firstborn are still God's, but God says, but you're not going to serve in my temple. You're not going to have that. I mean, you still owe me one, like big time, because I saved you guys while I took out the Egyptian firstborn. So you're definitely in a state of owing me your existence, and you're sanctified to me. But as far as who's going to serve in the tabernacle and the temple, it's the Levites. And I've taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn of the children of Israel. I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron, the high priest, and his sons, the priests, from among the children of Israel, to perform the service for the children of Israel in the tent of meeting, and to atone on behalf of the children of Israel, so that the children of Israel will not be inflicted with plague when they approach the sanctuary. So again, part of the Levite role is to assist in the service and to make sure that no one goes there when they shouldn't go there. So, verse 20, Moses, Aaron, and the entire congregation of Israel did this to the Levites. The children of Israel did in accordance with all that the Lord had instructed Moses regarding the Levites. They, placing the hand on that. They did the whole, everything we've been reading today. The Levites cleansed themselves and washed their clothes. Then Aaron lifted them as a waving before the Lord, and Aaron atoned for them to cleanse them. After that, the Levites came to perform the service in the tent of meeting before Aaron and before his sons. They did it to them just as the Lord had commanded Moses regarding the Levites. Okay, here we go. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, this is the rule concerning the Levites. From the age of 25 years and upwards, and I know what you're thinking, 25, we said 30. Hold on. From the age of 25 and upwards, he shall enter the service to work in the tent of meeting. I'm going to explain this in a moment. From the age of 50, he shall retire. That's an early retirement. 50, you're done. 50, retirement from the work legion, and do no more work. He shall minister with his brethren in the tent of meeting to keep the charge. So there is stuff that this 50-year-old plus Levite does do, but he shall not perform the service. Thus shall you do for the Levites regarding their charge. Let's talk about Rashi, if I can get this right this time. Rashi says 25. So, sorry, the Torah says 25 years old and up, they enter the service. And obviously, this is like a massive contradiction, as Rashi says elsewhere, like a bunch of times it says, from the age of 30 to 50. So what's this 25 business? How can this be reconciled? Rashi asks. However, from the age of 25, they came to study the laws of the service. In other words, they apprenticed for 5 years. They trained on the job for 5 years. The other training and education was before that also. But on the job training apprenticeship was 25 to 30. They would study for 5 years, and at the age of 30, they would begin work. They would get their certification, their stamp, off and running. From here, we learn that a student who does not experience success in his learning for 5 years will never experience it. Here you go. There's like a little bit of it's from the Talmud, Chulin 24a. The Talmud says, by the way, from here we see, the Levites learned for 5 years, then they became Levites. But if a person learns for 5 years and doesn't get it, you might want to find another job. If a person's learning to be, a shoemaker, and after 5 years still doesn't know the toe from the heel, so to speak, said no one ever. So then maybe look for something else to do. Maybe look for a different job and try to pursue something else. Okay. Rashi clarifies what happens at the age of 50. It says he shall retire from the work legion, but it also says that he should, in verse 26, that he still has some jobs to do. So what exactly is he not doing, and what could he still do? Rashi clarifies, and let's get the definitive idea here. It's Torah says, do no more work. Rashi says, i.e., that's referring to the work of carrying on the shoulders. This is really important. Remember the family of Kahat, there were 3 families. The family of Kahat, they carried the tabernacle furniture, that holy vessels, ark, menorah, showbread table, altars, they carried them with the poles. Remember, they were built with poles? They carried them on their shoulders. So Rashi clarifies that only the work of carrying on the shoulders ends at 50. However, he can return even after 50 to the work of locking the gates, singing, and loading the wagons. So the other jobs he can do. He meaning an over 50-year-old Levite. It's just the carrying the shoulders that can't be done. This is the meaning of he shall minister with his brethren. In the next verse, with his brethren, etc. Yeah? Okay. Fine. And what does it mean to keep the charge? Rashi adds one more piece, and then we're going to close it out here for the Chumash. We're going to jump into Mishnayos. Don't worry, we're not done yet. To keep the charge, Rashi says, that means to camp around the tent and to assemble. The tent means that the Mishkan area, and to assemble and dismantle it at the time of the travels. Okay, so we have an idea about the Levites. This was very strong Levite focus. Tomorrow, we have a wonderful discussion. Need to just double check. Yeah, we should be good tomorrow. Tomorrow, we have a wonderful discussion. It's going to be about the second Passover. I'm sorry, not the second Passover. The Passover that the Jewish people did. Oh, no, the first anniversary of Passover, how they observed it in the desert. And we're going to learn about Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. So all of that is coming up tomorrow in an exciting Beha'alotecha. All right, that is it for today. For the Chumash. All right, we're going to do Mishnayos in just a moment. I should mention also, for those of you that were by Nassan's bar mitzvah, anybody here some of you guys were by Nassan's, my oldest son's bar mitzvah. By the way, my oldest son just turned, it's crazy that I'm saying this because the math doesn't work in my head, but he just turned 17. I know. Whatever. Anyway, 4 years ago was a bar mitzvah and,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So his bar mitzvah parsha is this one, Beha'alotecha. So brings back good memories and good times, great oldies. All right, let's jump back into the screen.
Rabbi,
Donna.
You mentioned in the reading, we saw like 5 years. If you don't make it in 5 years, forget. So one Rabbi Schusterman's blog last week was saying the permanence of 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting, right? 3 establishes a chazaka, 3 establishes something as being set. But here there's I guess another angle on, education or apprenticeship, that 5 years is kind of like the litmus test, if you will. Like if it's not going in 5 years, try something else. Don't keep on heading down a path if it's not taking root in 5 years. Anyway, again, the disclaimer is DPP does not take responsibility for any financial advice. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Investing is always. Anyway, good. Let's jump into the Mishnayos. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to pull it up. So this is the Mishnayos in honor of my grandfather, in loving memory of Tzvi Hirsch ben Chaim Mishayoah Kohen. So we're studying Tractate Brachot, and we are up to chapter 4 of the Tractate Brachot. Okay, let's jump in. So now, here's what we're doing. I'll pull up some commentary here. I'm just arranging my screen here for the benefit of. Here we go. Okay, introduction. You ready? Chapter 4, introduction. You can see. Can you guys see the right side of the screen? Is that showing up at you guys? Ish? Yes? Okay. By me, like the face is blocked, so I have to move stuff around. Okay, whatever. Your mileage may vary. Okay, the 4th and 5th chapters of Brachot are all about the tefillah. Tefillah literally means prayer, but as we've discussed previously, tefillah is a euphemism or refers to the Amidah, the central prayer, which we today call the Amidah or the Shemona Esrei, due to its 18 benedictions, actually 19. Okay, fine. The tefillah is the central piece of rabbinically created liturgy. Okay, I'm gonna skip. This is a bit of a longer introduction than I would like. Okay, we're gonna jump into the Mishnah. So we talked about the Shema for the first few chapters. Now we're talking about the Amidah. Still prayer, but now we're talking about the Amidah. When can you say the Amidah until? Take a look. This Mishnah, back inside the actual Mishnah, which is on the left side of the screen, the main body of the text. This Mishnah determines the times beyond which the different prayers may not be recited. In other words, where do those prayers what are the parameters of the prayers? According to the rabbis, the morning prayer, Shachris, may be recited until noon. That means the Amidah in the morning, you can say it until noon. Rabbi Yehuda says it may be recited only until 4 hours after sunrise. Remember, noon is about halfway through, which is about 6 hours. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, not 6 hours, 4 hours. He brings it in a few hours, makes it earlier, makes the cutoff earlier. According to the rabbis, so that's one dispute. That's for Shachris. According to the rabbis, the afternoon prayer, which we know as Mincha, may be recited until the evening. Rabbi Yehuda says it may be recited only until the midpoint of the afternoon, known as Plag HaMincha, which is the midpoint of the period that begins with the sacrifice of the daily afternoon offering and ends at nightfall, which is the end of the afternoon. I believe it's about an hour and a quarter before nightfall. So what we have here is, with regard to the morning prayer, the general consensus of rabbis is you have till 6 hours into the day, which is noon. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, only 4 hours. What about the afternoon prayer? The general consensus of the rabbis is you have until nightfall. And what does Rabbi Yehuda say? No, an hour and a quarter before nightfall. So again, he's making it a little bit earlier than the general consensus. What about the night? What about the Arvis, the Ma'ariv? What about the evening prayer, the nighttime prayer? The evening prayer may be recited throughout the night and is not fixed to a specific hour. According to the rabbis, the additional prayer. What is the additional prayer? The additional prayer is Musaf. So right, on Shabbat or holidays, we recite an additional prayer, which is known as Musaf. So the additional prayer, the Musaf, may be recited all day. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, not all day. It may be recited only until 7 hours after sunrise. So that would be like around 1 p.m. If sunrise is 6, that would be about 1 p.m. So he says you got to get in early. I probably don't need to mention this, but I will anyway. The way it works in halacha is that when there's a machloket, when there's a dispute, you go by the majority. And in this case, you have the majority of rabbis that give extra time, and one rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda, that says, no, it's a smaller window. We don't paskin, we don't rule like Rabbi Yehuda, we have the much broader window. I will also say that even if you didn't say the Amida in the morning and it's past midday, you can still do it in the afternoon, do it whenever, I mean, not past nightfall if it's the morning prayer, but you can still do it. It's not ideal, but you can still do it. And if it's a choice between doing it or not doing it, do it. All right, Mishnah number 2. In addition to the laws, the halachot related to the fixed prayers, the Gemara relates, I guess. Maybe the Mishnah relates. All right, Rabbi, we're studying Mishnah, so I'm not sure Gemara, but Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, he was one of the great rabbis back in the day. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana would recite a brief prayer upon his entrance into the study hall and upon his exit. In other words, when he came in to the Beit Midrash, he would say a prayer, and when he left, he said a prayer. They said to him, the study hall is not a dangerous place that would warrant a prayer when entering and exiting. It's not like you're going into, I don't know, not. So what room is there for this prayer? Why are you saying a prayer for, like, what are you saying a prayer for? He said to them, upon my entrance, I pray that no mishap will transpire caused by me in the study hall. In other words, he's basically praying that no one should misinterpret what he says, so that, nothing, he shouldn't say anything wrong or give any incorrect rulings and lead people astray. That's his prayer when he comes into the study hall. And upon my exit, I give thanks for my portion. I thank Hashem for the ability that I have to study Torah and the part of Torah that I was able to study and master and even maybe contribute to. Beautiful, beautiful idea about Torah study and the convergence between prayer and Torah study. Number 3, Mishnah 3, chapter 4, Mishnah 3. The Mishnah cites a dispute with regard to the obligation to recite the Amidah prayer, also known as Shemona Esrei, the prayer of 18 blessings, or simply as tefillah prayer, which we mentioned before. So here we go. Rabbi Gamliel says, each and every day, a person recites the prayer of 18 blessings, the Shemona Esrei. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, a short prayer is sufficient. And one only recites an abridged version of the prayer of 18 blessings. Basically, Rabbi Yeshua says, give him the cliff notes, give him the spark notes, do a quicker version. You don't need to do the full 18. Rabbi Akiva says there's an intermediate option. Rabbi Akiva finds the middle ground. If he's fluent in his prayer, he recites the full deal. He recites the prayer of 18 blessings. And if he's not so fluent, he need only recite an abridged version of the prayer of 18 blessings. I will say that today, in synagogues that I'm familiar with, pretty much everyone does the full version to the best of their ability. If you look in your prayer book, standard editions, whether it's Art Scroll or Chabad, whatever it is, you're not going to find, I don't believe, certainly not in the Chabad version, you're not going to find the abridged version. You're not going to find the Cliff Note version, the shorter version. But it's the spirit of this is important. What that text is exactly is the Talmud discusses and the halachas discuss. But the main thing to know is that there's a full version, but at the same time, there's an understanding that not everyone's going to be able to get through or understand the full version. And so there's always an option. And as I say many times when people ask me a related question, am I allowed to pray in English? My classic go-to answer, which many rabbis say as well, is God understands all languages. He also understands if you need to do an abridged version. So God's a very understanding God. But the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, is a very special prayer, and ideally we do the full deal. All right, number 4. Rabbi Eliezer says, one whose prayer is fixed, his prayer is not supplication and is flawed. If you fix your prayer, fix means you establish it, then it's no good. The question is, what in the world does that mean? What in the world does that mean? How is fixed a bad thing? So the answer, what the Talmud gives an answer. Yeah. The Talmud explains that what is Rabbi Eliezer saying? It's really a beautiful idea here. Rabbi Eliezer is saying if your prayer is fixed, it's no good. What does it mean fixed? It means if your prayer becomes rote, I think it's spelled R-O-T-E, rote, or what's another word for rote? If it mechanical, if it becomes robotic, right, mumbling the words, fixed. The prayer is fixed means that it's like cookie cutter. It's bland and lifeless and autopilot. Maybe that's a better word. If your prayer is autopilot, then it's not supplication. It's not coming from the heart, and it's not prayer. Rabbi Eliezer is telling us that, we're talking about the I think it's perfect timing, by the way, because we're talking about the mechanics of prayer. When you do it, and we're talking about like the when, and Rabbi Eliezer reminds us that you also have to have your heart into it. You also have to feel it and mean it, and that's when it becomes prayer. All right, Rabbi Yeshua says, one who cannot recite a complete prayer because he's walking in a place of danger, right? Imagine you're in a place of danger. You don't have time to bust out the whole Amida. So he recites a brief prayer, and he says like this: redeem, Lord, your people, the remnant of Israel, at every transition, which the Talmud will elaborate on. In other words, at every turn, every critical junction, may you, Hashem, remember and redeem your people. May their needs be before you. Blessed are you, Lord, who listens to prayer. That's short and sweet. That's a nice little prayer right there. But again, that's only when he says you're walking in a place of danger and you can't, bust out the Amida. Let's continue with mission number 5. Interesting. You're going to love this. While praying, one must face toward the direction of the Holy Temple, which, by the way, is why in synagogues in the United States, we pray facing east, because Jerusalem is east. In South Africa, first time I was in South Africa, I asked my father-in-law, where's Mizrach? Mizrach means east in Hebrew, because I'm so used to asking that question. Where's Mizrach? Where's east for praying the Amida? He's like, you don't need to know where east is. You need to know where north is here, because you're praying in South Africa, you're praying north. So it's just, a bit of a mind shift for that. So and I think in England, what do they do in England? Is it also east or is it south? I don't know. Whatever they do in England, they do in England. Okay, so while praying, back to number 5, while praying, one must face toward the direction of the temple. Now, what if you're riding on a donkey? This is before Ubers, right? So what if you're on a donkey? So, and your GPS is, so one who is riding on a donkey should dismount and pray calmly. So it's better not to ride and pray, better to get off the donkey, orient oneself toward Jerusalem, concentrate and pray. If he's unable to dismount, he should at least turn his face toward the direction of the temple. Here it would be east, South Africa would be north, whatever it is. If he's unable to turn his face even, it is sufficient that he focus his heart opposite the Holy of Holies. In other words, he should meditate or have the intention that he's in that space near the Holy of Holies. Okay. Now, what about a boat? We talked about a donkey. What about a boat? Similarly, the Mishnah says one who was traveling in a ship or on a raft, asta, and is unable to turn and face in the direction of Jerusalem. So that person should focus his heart opposite the Holy of Holies. In other words, an intention of the heart, even if physically not able to orient oneself, it should be an internal focus. Finally, the last Mishnah, and with this we'll close it out for today, Mishnah 7, chapter 4. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, the additional prayer, Musaf, like what we say on Shabbat and holidays, the additional prayer is only recited in a city where there is a quorum of 10, known as a chever ir. So if you look in the sidebar over here, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the Musaf prayer is not an individual prayer, but rather a communal one. And it is only said with the local congregation. I'm going to continue reading. It seems that according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the Musaf retains a connection to its temple roots. While the other regular prayers are only loosely connected to the temple, the Musaf prayer is strongly connected. Since the temple was a public offering, the Musaf in the temple is a public offering, the Musaf prayer does not become an individual prayer. So you can only recite it, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, in the context of a quorum. The rabbis say, no, incorrect. The majority of rabbis say one may recite the Musaf, the additional prayer, with a chever ir or without a chever ir, with or without a quorum. Rabbi Yehuda says another opinion in his name, the name Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yehuda says, I heard differently about Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He says this, any place where there is a chever ir, an individual is completely exempt from reciting the additional prayer. In other words, you don't need the individual because the community is doing it anyway. So again, this is this last little piece of the sidebar here. Rabbi Yehuda said in his name, wherever there is a congregation, individual is exempt from saying the Musaf prayer. Rabbi Judah somewhat modifies Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's position. Individuals are obligated to recite the Musaf tefillah, but only if there's no congregation in his community to recite the prayer. If the community is reciting the prayer and he can't be there for some reason, then he is exempt. In other words, if the synagogue is doing Musaf and you're at home, then they got it covered. You don't need to do it. According to the first understanding is you wouldn't be allowed to do it at home. According to this understanding, you could do it at home, but you don't have to. According to the majority of rabbis, you should anyway. So we have a three-way dispute, and two of them are coming from the same rabbi in the name of the same rabbi. So clearly there was a game of a little bit of a broken communication there, or I don't know, broken, but a little bit of not 100% accurate communication regarding Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's opinion. Does he say that if you are without a minyan, you cannot say it, or that you're not obligated to say it? Either way, the majority of rabbis say that you should say it. So that's what we do. We say Musaf, even if we're in shul, no shul, there is a minyan, there's no minyan, we do it anyway. All right, that concludes chapter 4. I really appreciate you all.
All right, quick question.
Yeah.
When it says Rabbi Judah,
yeah.
Is that Judah the Prince?
Yeah, that's the author of the. I don't. I for some reason I scrolled really fast and now I lost a second here. Oh, chapter 6, 5, 4. Here we go. Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, so there was a tradition of what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, but Rabbi Yehuda, who was the redactor, the compiler of the Mishnah, he had another tradition about what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, different than the norm. He had heard that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, not that you can't, but that you shouldn't. Sorry, not that you are not allowed to say it, but you don't have to say it. All right. Anyway, so that's today. So we spoke about the Amidah, prayer, the takeaway that I like it all, but maybe a practical takeaway is we also have to remember that prayer is not meant to be rote. It's not meant to be mechanical or robotic. It's meant to be with passion and feeling and emotion and depth and authenticity. All right. It's great to see you all. Thanks for joining me today for Torah and Mishnah study. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. See you, Sandrine and Donna and Ray and Mark. Great to see you guys. Have a great day. See you.